Good morning. Welcome back to Global Bakes. I'm Tanya, and today is the update on my sourdough starter. Now, first, I do want to say I hope that you watched part one of my sourdough starter. I'm not only new to sourdough starter, but I'm new to YouTube, so I'm gonna try. I think it's right here. I'm gonna try to put a link to part one when I first created my starter. So take a look there. If it's not there, if I can't figure that out, then look in the description box below and make sure that you read that. One thing I want to say is super important. Click the bell button when you subscribe to my channel because hopefully you want to do that. But subscribe, but also click the bell button because I will tell you that the sourdough starter was supposed to sit for 72 hours. It was supposed to be Thursday before I did my next video on the starter. But it's ready, I think. Fingers crossed. I'm told by sourdough aficionados that it is ready. So I'm a day early with this video. So if you click that bell button, you'll be notified every time a video is uploaded. But if you don't click that bell button, you may miss one. So you can always catch up later, but if you want to stay up to date, then do that. Again, I have dogs walking around because they do that. They run my house. So hopefully, okay, so it's Tucker again, and Tucker wants out. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna let Tucker outside. Come on. What's up? Don't go that way, dude. Come on, let's go. Okay, sorry about that. My dogs really do run the house, and anytime I try to do something, that's when they decide they want to go out. And there are 3 of them, so they all go out at different times and come in at different times. Okay, back to sourdough starters. So I actually, full transparency, I wanted to let you know that I have 2 starters. This is the starter that was in the video that I posted on Monday, February 3rd. This is the first one that I made, but true to form for me, I can never just do one experiment. I decided to do 2. So about 8 hours later, I made this starter, and you can see that it hasn't grown quite as much. But the reason I have 2 is because this one I'm going to feed with a rye and bread flour mix. And this one I'm just going to feed with bread flour. And I just wanted to see the difference in the growth. And then also once I finally do start making bread, see the difference in the flavor. So I'm not going to use this one necessarily in the videos, but just in case you see the extra jar behind me, I'm not planning a switcheroo. I don't have 2 starters for the intents of the purposes of this video. This one is just going to be fed with, I'm going to start with a mixture of 100% bread flour, 30% rye, and then once I get it to a healthy state, I'm going to switch down and do 10% rye to keep it and maintain it. So that's what this one's for. It's not quite ready, but you can see that it has a lot of growth. So I'm going to put this one in the back. We're not going to use it yet. This one here, so this is the one that we started with on Monday. You can see the top line of the tape is where the sourdough was at when we put this aside to mature. Paul's recipe says it's going to take 3 days, but it has been less than 48 hours. It has been something like, I think we're at 38 hours or 39 hours right now. So I went to bed last night, and again, true to form, I become obsessed with things when I'm experimenting. So I took a look at it, and it was about here after about 30 hours. And I thought, well, okay, that's looking like it's on track for about a 72-hour time period. But then I got up this morning and it was way up here. And I thought, well, I don't know if it's ready. I don't know. It's not 72 hours. What do I do? And then I also noticed the separation of the water and the starter. So I messaged a few of my friends from my baking group. Hopefully you've seen our Home Bakers Collective. A couple of them are really into sourdough and they've been doing this for years. So I messaged them, sent them a picture, and they said, you know what, it's peaked. You've peaked, your starter is peaked. So go ahead and do its first feeding. I may be rushing things because I'm not waiting the 72 hours like Paul says to, but I feel like with bread and yeast, it's something that it's not gonna yield to your timeline, you have to yield to its timeline. So this starter, one of the questions I asked was they said that it's best to feed it at its peak, but you can feed it after its peak. My question was, how do you know if it's peaked? My only way to know it's peaked is when it peaks and then starts to fall. If that does happen to your starter, it's okay. you can still bring it back. It's still going to be fine if you feed it after its peak. But I'm going to go ahead and do it now. I'm going to jump the gun. I'm going to kind of go off of Paul's timeline because, again, this is yeast. It's not bread. And there goes the phone. We forgot to silence it. So we'll be right back because I also need to let the dogs in. Okay, dogs are in, phone calls handled. Of course, that was the high school. My son is being sent home 3 hours early because another thing I was going to mention about this sourdough is when we started this on Monday, it was 65 degrees here in the St. Louis area. Yesterday there was rain and ice. Temperature dropped. Today we're expecting 4 to 6 inches of snow. My kitchen has stayed a consistent about 70 degrees. Might have gotten up to 71, 72 when I've had the oven on to do some cakes yesterday. But that's kind of low for yeast. I think most people would grow it at about 75 to 80. So I thought it was going to take longer because it's cool in here. We do keep it kind of cool in the house. I get cold at 77 degrees because I was raised in San Diego. My husband thinks 70 is a perfect temperature. So we keep it at 70 and I wear a hoodie and socks and blankets all the time. But so this is the starter after not quite 48 hours. I've been told that the separation of the foamy stuff and the water is totally normal. One thing that that's been mentioned to me that you want to look out for is if there's any kind of a red or a pinkish tint, you have the wrong bacteria growing and you want to get rid of that starter because sometimes just the wrong thing can grow. But this has grown really well. After Sally, my friend, looked at it and a couple of other friends who do a lot of sourdough, they said that this looks like it's ready for a feed. So I'm going to go ahead. It looks like it's peaked. They said you can get rid of that water at the bottom or you can just mix it in. So I'm going to mix it in. And I will tell you, it doesn't smell awesome. There's a little bit of a sweetness to it, and I wonder kind of if that's the apple. It is really stringy and spongy. This is so fun. I was never very good at science in school because I have a hard time with strict experiments. I don't like rules very much. I like to break the rules. So maybe that's why sourdough is perfect for me, because you can't really follow a set of rules. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to measure all of this starter. I'm going to dump all of it into my jar just to see how much I have here. It looks like I have 385 grams. So what I'm going to do, and okay, now that it's out of the jar, it smells even worse. I know that's part of the process. I know it's supposed to smell better after it gets going. It is very stringy. Look at that. That's kind of fun. Okay, have another bowl ready. Also have a clean glass jar. I'm going to use a completely clean jar. I'm not going to go back into the jar that I just came out of. Also, another component of making sourdough starter is coffee, especially when you do it in the morning. Okay, so I'm not going to save all of this starter. It seems wasteful, but you're going to take out some of this and you're going to throw the rest of it away. Once you get this healthy, the stuff that you take out, the discard, you can use for something else, but at this point it's not usable. You're going to have to throw it away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep, we had 385 grams. I'm only going to keep 100 grams of it. That's just kind of based on some of the stuff that I've heard and read. That's a good amount. And we had a lot of starter. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a lot in there. Okay, and I have a little bit too much. I have 130, so I'm going to use a scoop that will make it a little bit easier. It's so stringy. Okay, I'm at 105 grams and I'm happy with that. So this is my discard. I'm going to get rid of the discard. I'm not going to use that. And again, it's not wasteful because you are getting to a good amount of starter. Once you get this going, you really only need to keep a little bit of it. So we're at 105 grams. So now I'm going to add equal parts flour and water. So I have 105 grams in the bowl. I am going to add 105 grams. Let's start with the water. I think it might be a little bit easier to mix. I'm going to add 105 grams of water. Okay. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a mix. Again, I've watched a million videos and read books and things, and this is just one of the methods that I've seen. And now I am going to go with 105 grams of flour. I don't think you have to be super exact. I don't think it has to be spot on 105 grams, which is good because I'm having issues with my scale. And I think I'm going to be buying a new one because this one is jumping a little bit. But like I said, I don't think this has to be spot on. The water was just a tiny bit over, just 3 grams over. But weighing is so important. You cannot make a sourdough starter with cups. I had a few people message me and say, okay, but you used the flour. How many cups was that? Can you do that to me in cups instead of grams? No, you have to use a scale. It's the better way to bake anyways. You do want to be exact when you bake. It is a science. So get a scale. They're really inexpensive. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get used to it, you'll realize that cups is not very consistent, and the best thing to do is just use grams or ounces. If you want to use ounces, that's fine too. Grams are smaller, so that's the method I go. Okay, so I've got the flour and the water mixed in here, and it's looking pretty good. I don't see any pockets. So it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to put it into my clean jar. Again, like I said in my first video, I would probably go with a wide mouth jar to keep the sides of this clean. It makes it just a little bit easier to tell what you're doing. But the spout on this bowl is really helpful, so maybe there's a tip. Okay, so this looks a lot like the consistency from day one. It looks like we're back to about the same amount. And we're going to measure this. We're going to mark this. Let's see, today is 5 February 2020. The time is 9:48 a.m. And again, I am just going to put this so that the top of the tape is right along the top of my starter. Okay, so I have seen people use rubber bands instead of using the painter's tape. I always have painter's tape in my kitchen. I used to have what my husband called the mood bathroom. Every time my mood changed, the bathroom changed color. I'm not that bad now, but there's always painter's tape in my kitchen. It's really handy for labeling anything that you're doing, labeling your dough when you put it in the refrigerator to chill, puff pastry, that kind of stuff. But I've used it here. You can see the top line of the tape is even with the top of the starter. I've got the lid on. It's on loosely, so it's going to let some of the CO2 escape, but it's going to keep it warm and hydrated inside. So there is my starter. We're going to set that to the side and watch it grow. I'm going to feed that other one later, just see how the rye does. Just another experiment going on. But please make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also it's really important that you click that bell button down there so that you're notified. This may take 12 hours, this may take 48. I have no idea, it's yeast. So it's going to do what it wants to do. So if you click that bell button, you will get notified as soon as the next video is uploaded in my sourdough starter journey. So thank you so much for stopping by Global Bakes. Again, I'm Tanya. You can check out my blog at globalbakes.com. After this is completely done, I'm going to type up everything, the entire process with the measurements, and post it there. So make sure that you check that out as well. So thank you again. Have a great day, and we will go see if we're going to have a snow day. Bye.